I'm Eric Greenleaf, and this is Healing from the Ground Up, a series of conversations with interesting people. Today I'll be talking with Tom Wilson, the Executive Director of the Canal Alliance in San Rafael since 1991.
92, actually. Yep.
And the winner of the Martin Luther King Jr. Humanitarian Award and the Benjamin Dreyfus Civil Liberties Award. And Canal Alliance is a community resource center in the heart of San Rafael. We'll be showing you pictures of a beautiful mural that kids in the Alliance had done. Could you tell us a bit about it?
Sure, I'd be glad to. Thanks for having me here today, Eric.
Sure.
I appreciate it. This mural project was a collaboration really with another group we work with called Forwards that teach young people literacy skills. And so they work with our youth and work with us as a partner together. And in our youth program, we have 80 students 40 from middle school and 40 from high school who come every day after school. And our goal is to get them to graduate from a four-year university eventually and have a great deal of success with that program. So this was a project that we did in that program. It took about 10 months, this project, and was actually shepherded by Precita Eyes, which is a nonprofit organization in San Francisco who created a lot of the murals in the Mission District. So they're very experienced, and so the process begins with storytelling. So the kids talk about their stories, and then from those stories come images. And the kids start to create images. They do some drawing on paper and talk it through with each other and with their mentors. And then eventually they start to put those images together in a form. And the form becomes then ultimately what you see on the wall in the front of our building. It's almost 40 feet high, so you can't miss it. It's a beautiful, beautiful, colorful thing, as you see on as you'll see on the screen. And the young people are very proud. It was really a great skill builder and self-confidence builder for the young people who participated. They had a big presentation and unveiling, and the mayor came out and dignitaries, so it was really a big deal. We're very, very proud of them and of Forwards and Precita Eyes for supporting the project as well.
Is that a typical way that the people in the Canal Alliance form a new program to start with the story and with conversations, or is it done in all sorts of different ways depending on the sort of service or healing gestures that people are making?
The cultures are storytelling cultures, so the stories are very interesting and people's lives are very interesting, and of course their journey as immigrants is most compelling. So, but the projects themselves begin out of an identified community need. We try and be very responsible and responsive to the community we serve, and try and deliver them the services that they need. Our mission is to help people thrive, particularly Spanish-speaking immigrants, and so there are many of them in the neighborhood, many immigrants. Almost more than 80% of the community is immigrant, Latin American. So given that, that's our target, and those are the people we focus our services on.
And say, in regard to services for immigrant kids who have just arrived, what kind of things does Canal Alliance provide, and also how do you know what to do?
Well, we work with families usually. On a broader scale, we work with families. Mostly it's the adults who come in, and then through working with the adults, we reach the children. But directly, we reach the children through the after-school program. So there's a little bit of difference there. People come to us. People ask me sometime how we do outreach. We really do kind of in-reach. People just come through our door. We've been there for 30 years, so everybody knows us pretty well. And so the way that we know what people need is they tell us. They identify their needs. And there are many, as you can imagine, people who have come to a new country, a new culture, many of them without advanced skills, and a lot of them even not semi-literate, not being able to read and write. So, it's a challenging thing to do, but very worthwhile, and we've had some great successes.
And so you have programs in literacy and what else?
Well, English as a second language, really.
Yeah.
We don't do specifically literacy. We also have a department that does economic development, which is job development, small business. We help people start small businesses. We have computer classes so people can learn how to use a computer to find a job or to further their business. And then ESL, we consider English as a second language. We consider part of that skill building because it's the ability to speak English is the key to the door for employment. Without English language skills, it's very hard for people to find employment. So we have 1,200 adult students over the course of a year in English classes. They're in the evening and they're on weekends, and we have some off-site and some on-site, and so we teach a number of classes, as many as we can. Excuse me, and those classes are taught entirely by volunteers, so it's a real tribute to the community as well that people come out to teach those classes.
Yes, it is. And within the families of this community, many of them are poor. Many of them are split by the vagaries of immigration. Mm-hmm. Sometimes the kids are here and not the parents, or vice versa. You've spoken sometimes about healing tools that the families need, and I was wondering if you'd speak a bit about those tools and how they're offered to people living in the community.
Yeah, a lot of the healing happens out of just having a sense of community. So people really have a new community. They've left their old community and part of their family, as you've said, and so they develop new connections. Those happen in any number of ways. One of the things a project that we're supporting right now is one that's called Voces del Canal, which means Voices of the Canal. And this is a project where people are doing community-based research to actually find out specifically from the people who live in the neighborhood what kinds of services they want, what they think about the quality of services that are being provided, and they've identified safety as an important issue as well. So classes, when we get people together for an English class or in our after-school program with our children, the parents are very much involved. In fact, it's a requirement that they be involved. And we do some events during the course of the year. We do at least a monthly event in which the parents and the youth gather together as a small community. And part of that is just a social opportunity to be together. And part of it is a training opportunity for parents to learn how to support their children in their education and support them in getting into college.
And you had said that you survey the community, and I'm assuming that the surveyors or the interviewers are also of the community.
Yeah. So I want to be really clear that this is something that came from the community itself.
Yeah.
We're not calling this a Canal Alliance project because it's not. We're just sort of supporting it. We raised a little money for it, and we kind of help to shepherd people through the process. We work with an organization called Data Center for Justice, and it's also supported by Dominican University, who also raised some money for the project. So with those as the primary partners, and then some other nonprofit organizations that have been involved to some degree, we've worked with people to help them to develop, first of all, to understand what research is and how research can be used, and then from there to learn how data is gathered, and then how it's analyzed, and then how it's presented. So people themselves you're absolutely right, were the people who have done the interviews. We're sort of 2/3 of the way through the project right now. The interviews have been done. They've done over 700 interviews in the neighborhood. They segmented the community up to make sure that they covered all of the geographic areas of the neighborhood, and so they'll be ready to present their data pretty soon.
I like the implicit notion that if you're armed with the facts, you could make a presentation on behalf of the community or your family or your kids at the school in a different way from somebody coming hat in hand to a government authority.
Exactly. It's also embedded in it is the attempt to change a age-old paradigm in which philanthropy really kind of sits at the top of the pyramid and decides what they want to fund. And then the next level down on the pyramid is the nonprofit organizations who do the work. So we get the money from them. We identify what we're going to do, largely often by their initiatives and their priorities. And then we try and translate that so that it supports the community. We're trying to turn that upside down, so really the people are at the top of the pyramid. And we are responsive to them, and then philanthropy supports those activities because they've been identified by the community.
So then you would bring a project to the foundation or the charitable organization and say, this is what the Canal community requires or would like or wants to be engaged in.
Yep, the interviewers and the participants will be learning how to make those presentations and, learning how to talk with data. There's a whole kind of skill about how you present data and how you highlight the particular parts of it that support your thesis or your desire. So they'll be trained like that, and they will be doing presentations around the county in different venues.
I like that very, very much. I know that you had spoken about Marin as a county of exclusive communities of different sorts, and wanted to ask you how the Canal Alliance and that community fits with the other communities in Marin, or whether it does not, whether it's its own separate enclave of a kind.
That to talk about that, I really need to talk about a transition over time, because when I started in 1992, it was a very isolated community. There was not much interaction between people in the neighborhood and people outside of the neighborhood. Usually the only connections were made through employment. And that's a good start. I mean, I've known some people who have made some great friendships as a result of hiring people to work in their homes. But that was when, in the early years, we started a community festival that we did annually for 7 years in a row. And the goal of the community festival was to bring people from the rest of Marin into the neighborhood so they could see the cultural richness and the beauty of a neighborhood that people ordinarily only come in to get their car fixed or get their laundry done. And so, because it really is, because of the geographical location and configuration, people don't just drive through the canal. There are only 3 ways in and 3 ways out, and so you usually come there if you have business or if you live there. So this festival was sort of the first overt attempt to really get people to recognize each other as a community. Since then, over time, there have been a number of things. We, as I said, we did that for 7 years, and we just recently had a great event to celebrate our 30th anniversary of the organization. It was a party, really, that we threw for our community. So we had music and food and dance, and all of it was done by and provided by the community itself, for itself. And it was an interesting observation. We tried to make sure we did everything in 2 languages because we wanted to be very inclusive. But during the course of the afternoon, English kind of dropped off because really the vast majority of the people there were Spanish speaking and from directly living in the community. All of the performers all provided they weren't paid for what they did. They came in and because it was a community event and they were presenting for their neighbors, people came out for free. Of course, the food vendors charged, but that was necessary. But it was a great party. And so those are some of the ways that we've tried to to bridge the freeway, as we talk about it, to get people to get to know each other. There, in all fairness, there's been a lot of work done by the faith communities and others. Marin Organizing Committee is a faith-based community organizing project that does a lot of work to get people together. And there are a couple of other organizations in the neighborhood, Parent Services Project, that works with students in the school and works with the parents of students and helps them understand how to negotiate for themselves within the schools. So there's lots of ways that we get that bridge built across the freeway, and it's pretty pretty mixed now.
So it needn't be all, of course, geographical mix. It's somebody who has to go to City Hall or someone who comes to the fiesta from another Marin community.
That's right.
Who gets to know a very accomplished and vibrant group of people living over there.
Yep. And the other interesting thing that's happened, of course, is that over time, it's not the only place where immigrants live. Now, in the rest of San Rafael, in the last 10 years, from the census in 2000 to 2010, the Latino population in Novato has grown dramatically, even though the population of Novato stayed about the same. And in fact, in Marin City, which was almost entirely African American for many years, new housing opportunities there have created a place for immigrants to move into as well. And almost 40% of Marin City is now Latino. So the population, in fact, we always identified our community as the Canal community, but we stopped that a few years ago. We now identify our community as the immigrant community because it's geographically so spread.
How is the recent presidential directive that allows kids to have some standing in the larger society, how's that affected these various Latino and other immigrant communities?
I'm glad you brought it up. I mean, that's one of the biggest things that's happened in a long time, especially in the area of immigration, which of course is a very sensitive and complicated situation. But you're referring to a program we call it DACA, which is the acronym for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So it's people of a certain age range and a few other requirements that people have to meet to be eligible for DACA. And what it does is it's a deferred action. The action being deferred is deportation.
Oh.
So it's really what they're saying. They're saying to people, okay, you trust us, give us your information, and expose yourself to the federal government, and we'll give you a temporary deferral of deportation. In other words,
temporary meaning how long?
It's 2 years. It's a 2-year program.
Ooh.
So, and it could be renewed, and it's likely that it will be renewed. There are other things like that within immigration law that happen, but so it's likely, but it's not a sure thing. So the sort of devil's dilemma that people have to deal with, young people and their families, is, well, do I give all my information over to the federal government, tell them that I'm here as an undocumented person, and in exchange get a work authorization and a driver's license? Those are really the benefits that people derive from it that are the most valuable.
And this would be only for young people, Tom, of a certain age, but not, say, for their parents or grandparents?
No, and it doesn't include family members in any kind of way. So it's roughly people between the age of 15 and 30. Now there's ways that that's defined, and they have to be in school or have been in school, and they have to be going to college or be in college, or there are a number of other defining issues that it's not just everybody in that age range. But they tried to really target people who were brought here by their parents and didn't make the decision to come themselves. So it doesn't, it's not an amnesty program. It doesn't lead to anything. There's no promise of a future. Yeah. And so you can see how it would be a difficult decision for people to make.
Yes,
so what we do is we help people do the paperwork, we help them do the application, and then we send them off with the application and our blessings. And we can't really make that decision for families. They really have to make that decision themselves.
Does it seem to be that there's an acceleration of the numbers of families taking that opportunity, or are people very overall hesitant and unsure, or what's been your impression?
That's an interesting question as well, because as you know, as you might have heard, we're having a presidential election.
I think sometimes.
You heard something about that?
I
yes.
did.
And so there are people who are wanting to get it in right away.
I think one of the candidates has Mexican ancestry, if I'm not mistaken.
I can't remember which one, but so there are people who interpret that in whatever way they will.
Yeah.
So some people think that if one party or the other is elected, it's going to have a different impact on the program. Of course, none of that is known, but it is something that people take into consideration. So some people are hurrying to get it done right away. Other people are getting it ready and going to wait for the election to either turn it in or not, depending on what their understanding of what the situation might be. So the timing is very, very strange. We've done, we call them informational workshops, charlas in Spanish, and we have talked to almost 1,000 people who are interested. We've actually prepared the packet for more than 300 people now, young people. There's somebody came up with a number of 1,600 people in the county who might be eligible altogether. I don't know where that number came from, and I don't know if it's the right number, but I would guess that there are at least that many people who would be eligible. The other complication, of course, is that people have to have a clean record, if you will. And so there are things like drug possession or gang affiliation, which is a very difficult thing to really sort out. Those kinds of activities will make a person not eligible. So if I apply and I'm not eligible, then I'm not being deferred any longer. So there's another kind of level of exposure there that's kind of tricky.
It's not exactly a glorious and free program.
No, it's not, but it sure got a lot of people, interested, and it's something. People have been so hungry for something to happen with immigration that they're just jumping at the chance to have the opportunity. I mean, the simple ability to drive a car legally,
or to work legally, any of that.
Yeah.
Tell me this, in the last few minutes that we have to talk today, Tom. How did you get engaged with the Alliance, and how do you sustain your interest over this very long period of time and changing circumstance and difficulty?
Well, I do have some heritage that's related to the culture, albeit thin.
Yeah.
My great-grandmother was from Mexico, but that's not really what created the interest. It's really more of an interest in justice.
Yeah.
Immigrants right now are at the bottom of the totem pole, if you will, in terms of their ability to integrate into the culture and to be treated equally and fairly. So it's really what drove me to the work is justice, and that's what fuels me and keeps me going is because it's just there's so many injustices that happen to that particular community. That's a good place to focus. So that's where I'm going to stay for now.
And also I think it's true. As you're talking, I think of my grandparents' immigrant experience coming from Eastern Europe, and a sort of a resonant similarity, probably not an identity, with the problems you've discussed. Immigrants jammed in a small, poor community, not the best part of the city, not the most accessible to public service.
Yep. It's very much an immigrant story, and the interesting thing for me is that it's a generational journey. It's the immigrant story is historically that way, and it is that way now. The parents come, they work hard, they learn the language the best they can, they provide for their children, and they invest in their children's education, and then their children become educated and then really carry the torch from there. we have, you know, I've been there a generation now. So
Yeah.
we have 6 people on our staff now who were raised in the neighborhood as children. They were, some of them, in our programs as children.
And now they run
And now they're
programs
coming-
and promote
exactly.
them and organize them
Exactly.
and invent them.
Exactly. You know, one little touching thing I wanted to add about DACA was we were getting ready for one of those workshops one afternoon, and I walked through our waiting room, and it was filled with people. And there were these 2 young women standing there. They were probably, you know, early college age or so, and they had their packet, and they were dressed like they were going to their lawyer. You know, to them it was an important appointment, and they had such a look of hope on their face, and they were dressed for this occasion, and it just really touched my heart to see that, because that's the kind of human quality that people bring, and that's what we hope to be able to do something about, give them the hope that they wish for.
Tom, it's been a great pleasure talking with you today, and it's very appealing to hear all of the things that a community of people with only the means of their own spirit and hard work can accomplish.
Yep.
It's really quite moving and wonderful, and I can see why you're so committed and engaged, and even how much you're enjoying things like the mural project, the fiesta, and even the difficulties of organization and all of the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
So this is Eric Greenleaf, and we hope you'll join us again on Healing from the Ground Up.